A man walks into a cemetery and he says, "This place is so popular that people are just dying to get here." As simple as that sounds, life has a very simple way of teaching us life lessons. And one thing that most of us avoid to talk about is death. From the very first day that you were born, you are busy dying. Let's look at it in its simplicity. The minute you come out of your mother, who's waiting for you outside the birth canal? It's either death or birth. If a child comes out and is not breathing, they call it stillbirth. And what that simply means is that death is won. But if the child is alive, it is the responsibility of the parents to keep the child away from death. Because from the mother's womb and coming out into the birth canal, death is busy waiting just to snatch life away from you. A little baby doesn't know anything to do with death. Kids have no fear for anything that will kill them. A child will crawl into fire. A child will play with a snake. A child will crawl and jump off a building. Just because that child is young does not necessarily mean that because he doesn't know death, that death is not going to snatch that child. As we start growing up, our parents, our early child caregivers, they protect us and they build this fence of life around us that death does not win. When we start getting into our teens, think of it, we start experimenting. We start drugs, we start sex, we get into the car as teenagers and we start teasing death. While that boy is sitting in that car, his friend that is sitting next to him tells him, "This speedometer says this car can go up to 200 kilometers an hour. Why are we driving at 100 kilometers?" Now, because they experienced or they experimented with either drugs or alcohol, his friend says, "You know what, step on it. Let's see how fast we can go." And anytime they take that risk, who do you think moves closer? Death. Death is always waiting. The faster you drive and the more you experiment with things that you're not supposed to be doing, death moves closer because it knows that you're just a fraction away for it to snatch you. As young people, when we get into cars, we don't even think of putting on a seatbelt. But when you get into your 40s, when you get into your 50s, all of a sudden, you start to hear this whisper. And it says, live. Live your life. When you look back and you ask, who are you? It says, it's me, death. And what do we start doing when we get into our 50s? We try to do as much as we can to widen the distance between us and death. What are the common things that we do? When we get into that car, the first thing that we do, we put on a seatbelt. The first thing that we do, we observe traffic rules. The third thing that we do, we make sure that the speedometer does not go past what the car manufacturer tells us. We start eating right. We start going to gym. We start doing all these things to make sure that we keep death at bay. But the Quran clearly says that in the end, death will overtake you. As much as we know that we're all going to die, but it is your responsibility to delay death as much as possible. There are so many things that we do on a daily basis that gives death an upper hand in our lives. When you stop eating right and you start eating junk, when you stop resting, getting enough hours and watching more television at night than going to bed, when you start doing all these things that shaken and make sure that they weaken your existence, they weaken your mind, they will make death take over. Yes, we can't avoid death, but you have the power to delay it. God did not create us to end up in heaven. God created us to be here on earth. we should not be in a rush to go to heaven, because the kingdom that we've been given is the kingdom of earth. And to do that, we need to do everything possible to live as long as possible. And that comes with the full responsibility of making sure that you try and live a righteous life. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do the right thing. Comment and share this among your friends. And always remember to like our content. God bless and stay blessed.